Howdy, howdy. Next up is a short section called Gag Order, which starts on page 154. And gag order, is this concept of not being allowed to speak, which is a really interesting throwback to our title. Okay, so gag order. And today we are looking at Mr. Neck and David Petrakis again. Okay, so gag order, page 154. David Petrakis' lawyer had a meeting with Mr. Neck and some kind of teacher lawyer. Guess who won? I bet David could skip class the rest of the year if he wanted and still get an A, which he would never do. But you better believe that whenever David raises his hand, Mr. Neck lets him talk as much as he wants. David, quiet David, is full of long, drawn-out, rambling opinions about social studies. The rest of the class is grateful. We bow down to the almighty David, who keeps the neck off our backs. Unfortunately, Mr. Neck still gives tests, and most of us fail them. Mr. Neck makes an announcement. Anyone who is flunking can write an extra credit report on a cultural influence at the turn of the century. He skipped the Industrial Revolution so he could drag our class past the year 1900. He does not want all of us in summer school. I don't want to see him in summer school either. I write about the suffragettes. Before the suffragettes came along, women were treated like dogs. So this is an important thing to pay attention to because perhaps you don't know much about the suffragettes, right? But based off of our context clues, we know that it has to do with being past the year 1900, and we know it has to do with the way women were treated. And according to Melinda and history, women were treated quote unquote like dogs. That's that simile they're using, like or as, right? And so she then lists the ways that women did not have equal rights. So she says women could not vote back then. They could not own property like a house or land or business place. And then thirdly, women were not allowed in many schools. So they were barred from educational institutions like universities, for example. Melinda continues to tell us at the bottom of 154 that women were dolls with no thoughts or opinions or voices of their own. And of course, women had thoughts and opinions, but they weren't necessarily encouraged or allowed to express those thoughts and opinions. Melinda says, then the suffragettes marched in full of loud, in-your-face ideas. They got arrested and thrown in jail, but nothing shut them up. They fought and fought until they earned the rights that they should have had all along. So the suffragettes were women who were doing their best to gain the right to vote and to have a voice in American politics. And it's true, they did in history get arrested because it was illegal to do such protesting, and it was illegal for them to vote, and they would try to do it anyway and get arrested for it, right? Now, in hindsight, we know that that's wrong. Everyone should have the right to vote in America. But back in the early 1900s, they had to fight for that right, and they unfortunately suffered some really negative consequences. So here are some pictures of suffragettes. Top of 155. Melinda says, I write the best report ever. Anything I copy from a book, I put in quotes and footnotes. Footnotes. I use books, magazine articles, and a videotape. I think about looking for an old suffragette in a nursing home, but they are probably all dead. Yikes, this is kind of true. I even hand it in on time. Okay, so you the reader, me the reader, we're really impressed, right? We know that she's worked hard. This is a big deal for Melinda. She is really, really interested in this idea of women who have a voice, right? Because of our book title, Speaking. And so she works really hard on this project and this writing piece, and she turns it in on time. She's proud of it. We're proud of it. Look at what Mr. Neck does. Mr. Neck scowls. He looks down on me and says, to get credit for the report, you have to deliver it orally tomorrow. at the beginning of class. Me. Wow. So he's going to make her read it out loud to the whole class. Do you think this is going to go well, y'all, for our little Melinda?